Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Almaraz, CBTS employee, and I am from Monterrey, Mexico. Very excited to open up this event with Antonio Neri and Leigh Fox. This event is part of our ERG Hispanic Employee Resource Group named Conexión. This organization annually celebrates Hispanic Heritage Month, have guest speakers, do Spanish classes with employees, and are planning actually a trip to Spain in the spring of 2022. I'm just thankful for being here in front of the presence of this great Hispanic leader, Antonio. We host different events throughout the year, and if you're interested in being part of it, please send me an email to jonathan.almaraz@cbts.com, and I will make sure someone connects with you. CBTS and Onyx in Canada are integral parts of the Cincinnati Bell family and are both HPE Platinum partners with a strategic relationship with HPE for over 30 years. CBTS and Onyx attend the HPE flagship event Discover every year, hosting over 100 of our top customers and prospects, introducing them to the latest advances in technology for better business outcomes. We support Antonio's direction for HPE of everything as a service from edge to cloud, with our services initiatives built around the HPE consumption model program. CBTS is honored to have been invited by HPE to participate in an exclusive consumption model program, a distinction only offered to a few key partners worldwide. CBTS generates over $500 million in revenue annually by supporting over 2,400 clients in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. With that being said, let's move on to the event. I would like to introduce all of you to our special guest, Antonio Neri, who is from Argentina and President and Chief Executive Officer of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. During his nearly 23 years at Hewlett-Packard Company and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Antonio has held numerous leadership positions in HPE's enterprise group, which included the company's server, networking, storage, and technology services business unit. Antonio led the strategy, development, and introduction of many breakthrough innovations at HP and HPE, and champions the company's shift to an edge to cloud as a service model. Antonio graduated from Escuela Nacional de Educación Técnica in Argentina and attended the Universidad Tecnológica Nacional. He's also a professor of drawing and painting. Interviewing Antonio today is our CEO, Leigh Fox, who serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer of Cincinnati Bell, Inc. Mr. Fox joined Cincinnati Bell in July of 2001 and has served in several executive positions during his tenure, including as a Chief Operating Officer from 2016 to 2017 and Chief Financial Officer. During his time as a CEO, Mr. Fox has transformed Cincinnati Bell into a national and international technology company through the acquisition of Onyx Enterprise Solutions and Hawaiian Telecom. A native of Cincinnati, Mr. Fox holds a bachelor's degree from Miami University and an MBA from the University of Cincinnati. He is the chair of the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber and is on the boards of American Red Cross and UC Foundation. Thank you all for your time today, and Leigh, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it. Really appreciate the warm introduction. Antonio, welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the introduction. And I appreciate you inviting me to have this conversation, which I hope it will be inspiring to people. But before we get started, I think we need to wish Happy International Women's Day to all the women that join the event. It's a good day, and we should celebrate them.
Amen. Amen. So before we get started, I do just want to thank you for your time. I know you're very busy. You're an important partner of ours, and I want to thank you for that. I think we've seen a lot of success together, and I hope to see a lot more success together in the future. Yeah. So to kick things off, I'm going to start with less of a question and more of just a curiosity. Could you just walk through your career? I read your bio, and starting at HPE, I believe you started as a call center rep, and look at you today. So I think the folks would be very interested to hear just how your career progressed and different things you touched along the line.
Sure. I mean, I always enjoy sharing my background because I don't have any secrets whatsoever, and it's always good to reflect on yourself and about where you came from, which I never forget, right? So I'm a son of two Sicilian immigrants to Argentina. My father moved there when he was 32 years old from Sicily to Argentina, and my mom was 20. I grew up between Argentina and Italy for a period of time. I went back to Italy for 5 years. But the vast majority of my studies I did in Argentina as a teenager and eventually in college. I started working when I was very young. I actually joined a middle school inside the military base in Argentina, which is a Navy base called Base Naval Puerto Belgrano. I was not a military person. I was a civilian, just learning new technologies. In that case, I was an electronic technician that got the opportunity to work in the shipyards to repair the radar and sonars of the military ships. And during the 1982, we had that conflict with the UK, the Falkland War. And so I was 15 years old, and I saw some very interesting but disturbing, events that mark you for life. But, life continues, and I completed my studies and while I was working, and then I joined Exxon, which in Argentina is called ESSO. And then eventually I moved to Italy. Even though I had a great job in Argentina for the time, I decided that was not a country I wanted to live long term. So I moved to Italy, where I had all my relatives. And I started working for an IT company as a mainframe operator. And then eventually I met a girl. And it took me to Holland. and that's where I joined HP in 1995 as a call center agent. And, it's kind of a reflection of, destiny, but as well as leadership, because when I joined the call center in 1995, HP was looking for someone who understood PC client server architectures and spoke Italian and Spanish. Think about it. You're in Amsterdam. It's a very diverse environment. They were supporting 21 languages on the phone across all the European countries. And they had a hard time hiring someone who understood the technology and spoke Italian and Spanish. But my English was terrible. Now that has improved a lot, but I remember doing the test to pass the English test, and I failed.
Oh.
and I failed, and I remember the British Jamaican hiring manager said, "Forget his English. He speaks Italian and Spanish. He's deep technically. We will teach him English." So the reflection is, Leigh, that unless you give people chances, they will never grow. And until today, to this day, I'm grateful for my friend, which is now my friend Gilly, to give me the chance to join the company. And since then, obviously, I've done multiple things inside the company, which is an amazing company. So here we are, 23 years later, I became the president of the company, one of the few Latinos that had the honor. And leading a company that has Hewlett and Packard in the brand is a very special thing because it's the founder of Silicon Valley. And if you think about the history of HP, which is now over 82 years old, even though we split it, the reality, I'm the fifth CEO within the company. The first 50 years was Bill and Dave. They flipped the coin every year and said, well, this year you are the CEO, I'm the chairman. Next year we invert roles, we switch roles. And then in 1982, they decided, we had enough of this. We will be engaged as a board members, but not running the company every day. And they asked a gentleman by the name of John Young to lead the company from 1984 to 1992, and then Lou Platt from 92 to 2000, and then eventually that became, the merger with Compaq, with Carly, and so forth. So I'm following Lou Platt, and it's an incredible honor and responsibility.
Wow, that's fantastic. So obviously, look, as a part of your background, you've traveled quite a bit. And honestly, that's something we have in common. I traveled quite a bit as a kind of young professional. How did that shape you both personally and professionally?
Well, quite a bit. In fact, in that wall there, I wish I could turn, there is a map, and I have a pin to all the places I visited around the globe. And the map is pretty full of pins, everywhere. I speak 4 languages. My wife is Dutch. She speaks 6 languages. and my two kids were born in the United States, in Boise, Idaho, of all the places, right? Because I was transferred there from Amsterdam to Boise as a part of the LaserJet business that they asked me to lead. And, obviously, to me, I always grew up in a multicultural environment, and I value the concept of diversity. And if you think about it, the times we live in today, Leigh, I think, the challenges with inclusion, social injustice, and diversity in general. In fact, today I hosted my Inclusion and Diversity Council that lead across the company to basically make a change. But it makes you stronger, it makes you better. And I am a believer that diversity makes a company better. Diversity of gender, opinion, philosophy, and so forth. And, that level of thought, it makes you stronger, I believe. And that's why, I love going around the globe, because you learn new cultures, you learn new things that you can incorporate in your own culture as you go along the way. Remember, we're a company that operates in 170 countries, and that's a global footprint. 60,000 employees, right, around the globe.
Wow, it's amazing. We very much in common on how we think about culture and diversity. I constantly preach, diversity just makes you better, period. I mean, there's no other way of saying it. And clearly culture and diversity have been very important for you. But, being a technology company, and we see this quite often, unfortunately, you just don't see a lot of diversity, especially as you move up in the ranks in technology. I'm very curious. One, have you seen that change in recent years? And what more do we need to do to encourage that change in leadership ranks in technology?
Well, I think it starts in the education system, right? How we encourage our kids, this generation and the next generation, to get into the science and technology tracks, because we have to start creating that pipeline, from early on. And we work very closely with universities. We have partnerships across multiple universities where we engage them. In some cases, we actually sponsor them. And in some cases, we even teach curriculums, right? For example, here in Houston, we have the AI Institute where our engineers teach AI in the universities. And I remember before the pandemic stopped, and I had the auditorium full of young kids, and it was a good mix of diversity, not just gender, but ethnicity and so forth. And so start there. Then the second piece of this is that you got to make it a mandate for your managers. And so, for example, today, when we have an open requisition in our company, I mandate at least 3 diverse candidates to be considered as a part of the hiring process. I'm not in favor of quotas and whatever it is, because normally this should not be a hard thing to do. It should be natural. But unfortunately, it's not that natural for certain people, right? Yeah. Obviously, we want to bring the best talent, but sometimes you have to take chances on people and allow people to grow. Not different than me, right? Think about it, right? And so we have established clear metrics. And by the way, one of the key metrics on our pay for performance is what we call an MBO, a manager business objective, where 20% of the pay is tied to specific metrics, and one of them is diversity inclusion. And so, as an industry, we have to do more. Again, it starts with putting a clear strategy and making ourselves accountable to it.
Totally agree. I think accountability is really, one of the keys, and intentionality. All right. You have to be intentional about what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So shifting gears a little bit, and specifically for Hispanics, right? Since this is for our Conexión ERG. If you look back at your career and you look at what other Hispanics are doing in their career, are there any words of advice or wisdom that you could give someone to say, look, this is how I would suggest you handling pieces of your career, or how you get ahead, especially as you transition from possibly living in your country of origin to moving to somewhere like the United States? Are there certain things that you experienced that you would say, hey, this is the advice I would give a young Hispanic?
Well, I think, listen, first of all, you have to have a vision for yourself. What do you want to be by when? And also realize that it takes sacrifices. And at the same time, you need to do what you say. I guess I was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time, but people took chances on me. And I remember one of the key conversations I had with one of the managers, which is retired, and he lives here in Houston, sometimes walks by my house, is, Antonio, you are a diamond in the rough. If we can give you a little bit of polishing, you can go far. But he took interest in me, and obviously he became a coach and mentor. And coach and mentor are two different things. But you, as a young individual, you have to be able to take risks and chances, and you have to work hard. You have to have ambition, and not be afraid of failures. In my life, I had to restart twice. I mean, listen, I was living in Argentina. I had a great job working for ExxonMobil, which in South America is called ESSO. I was managing the downstream distribution plant in the computing systems. I was earning at least the power of 10 times the average salary. But then I stepped back and said, listen, this thing is not going to change. Doesn't matter how much I earn. This is not the quality of life I want. So I took the chance. I moved to Italy, and I had to start all over. It wasn't easy. And then, obviously, met the girl, then I went to Holland, and I started all over again. And then, I took the chance to move to the United States, which, obviously is a whole different culture about growing here. Obviously, you have way more chances here than in European context and setting. And then, I always, put my head down, learn as much as possible. You've got to create a network around you. And the network is about colleagues that makes you stronger by sharing best practices, and then establish coaching and mentors with you taking ownership of your career. Nobody's going to give you all the answers. You have to figure it out along the way.
You hit on so many, I think, key aspects of a career. You and I are so unbelievably similar. It's kind of crazy. The risk taking, I started in geology for Schlumberger, and totally after about 4 years decided I just can't be in the oil industry.
This is not for me.
I quit. I was just done. I quit a full-time job with a fiance who I was about to marry, and just said, sweetie, I can't do it anymore. It just doesn't make me happy. And I went to grad school and, decided to go into finance with a geology undergrad. Right. But I think it's the risk-taking part, is I think it's a big thing. I think follow your passion and, the things that really make you happy. And I think you ultimately find the way. I'm going to skip around a little bit. We got this question in from, one of either your employees or my employees. And I get this a lot, actually. You and I have been in our companies for about, similar times. I've been for 20 years, you're 23 years. And they see someone in our position, and I'm constantly asked, especially by younger folks, like, well, sort of, what is the secret sauce? What's the formula for being a CEO?
There is not.
Antonio?
There is not. I always said that the CEO job is the most lonely job in the company because everything starts and ends with you. And, the boss stops with you, and sometimes you have to make tough decisions. And sometimes those are very unpopular. But as long as you do it with the respects and the clarity and the transparency, people will understand. People want authenticity. I think one of the things that I commend myself at least is that I am who I am. I'm not going to change. I follow my values. I follow my principles, and I conduct myself the same way in my personal life than in my professional life. And so people value that because obviously people want to work for leaders that they can resonate with. But there's no secret sauce, There are things that, as you do, Leigh, that you have to figure out on the fly. Listen, when I became CEO, nobody told me how to talk to the street. And that's the most annoying part of the job, to be honest with you, right? Is convince them that we have a great
I have no comment
strategy
on
and
that,
things.
Antonio. I have no comment.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm happy, I roll my sleeves and I talk to one of my call center agents, on anything. And the advantage, I have is that we know how the company operates. We know our customers, we know our partners, right? And we know how the company runs. And that's an advantage which you need to use to really elevate yourself to become strategic, but also to make that connection with their employees so they understand some of the challenges they go through every single day. But there is no book. You figure it out as you go.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I tell people that constantly, but I have noticed, like, there's two of us on the call here. We both have an oil background. We're mostly, I don't know, maybe there's a correlation. I might do some research. I don't know.
Yeah.
You spoke about authenticity, right? And I completely agree. I think one of the things that, when I came into this job, one of the things I focused on, because it is a heavy job. It is unlike anything that you can really describe. I tell people, I sat as the CFO next to a great CEO for 4 years, and office right next to him, talked to him every day. Got this job and thought maybe I know a little bit about what the job is, and just I really didn't. You have to. It's a job where I feel like you have to experience it, but I have really focused on that authenticity. Like, just I have to keep being myself as a part of this.
Yeah.
And a part of that I noticed with your background is you're a painter, right?
Yeah.
I am a huge fan and advocate of the arts. Absolutely love what the arts do for you as a human being. Can you talk a little bit about what painting does for you and how it influences your leadership style?
Well, I started, drawing and painting when I was young, 10 years old. It attracted me, the creativity aspect of it. But, people don't realize, as a person, I'm an introvert. Although I fake it, because obviously I'm able to have conversation and engage large crowd and no problems. But generally, I'm an introvert guy. And so what that means, it means I need my space once in a while. And I don't know about you, Leigh, but one of the things I find difficult in our job is finding time to think. Yep. You run boom, 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 like back to back to back. And people expect you to perform, like today, I'm just looking at my schedule here. I had a call with Verizon and TNT, and then, I went to an investor call. Then I had an inclusion diversity council. Then I had interviews with the press. Now I'm doing a fireside chat with you, but you don't have time in between. It's like back to back to back. And so what painting does to me creates the space for me to relieve stress and also to think and also to create, because it allows me to use the other part of the brain, more the artistic side than the engineering side. I'm an engineer by trade, but I like the artistic side, so that you can think and create. And, I get involved in things that normally some other people will not. We were talking early on with our colleague Pat, about the new headquarters in Houston. I'm personally designing the interior of the building. And the reason why is because I care about the experience we provide to our employees. Now, I have the artistic side and I have the engineering side. And I always said, Leigh, if I will start all over again, I will be an architect, because it gets to use both sides of the brains in a unique way.
I couldn't agree more. Very similar. I've played music for years, and I think that's what it does. And I think the one thing to describe about these jobs, and I think you articulate it really well. Look, it's not just the volume of what you experience; it's the diversity of what you experience in a day, and the fact that your brain is constantly bouncing back and forth. And you are expected in every case to come in, be on target, and in some cases you absorb or understand 30%, but you're supposed to make a decision. And that's, to me, I think that's where the artistry comes in. And your ability to work through things like that, right?
Yeah, it's helpful because you pace yourself, and then you start developing new skill sets. How to quickly absorb the essence of what's going on, and then be able to process at the speed that you need to make those decisions. Remove the noise from the from the news in many ways and be able to do that. But also at the same time, I will say, is to find the right work-life balance. I value that as an Italian and as an Argentinian. I value that. And one of the things I enjoy is playing soccer. My life is, grew up playing soccer.
Wait, you're Argentinian? You like soccer and you're Argentinian?
Well, there's a flag there. Every Sunday, my Argentinian friends and I play the league here in Houston. And we are on average probably in the mid-50s. Think about it. Mid-50s, playing
That's
soccer,
awesome.
large field. And we have won 5 of the last 8 championships playing with younger people. Because you remember, when you're Argentinian, you play soccer. You don't play for fun. You play to win. And if you're not going to win, you pick a fight. You pick a fight. At least you have some fun with it. So
it is a different level of competitiveness.
Definitely. That's
so
not
curious.
entertainment.
So who's your favorite team?
Boca Juniors in Argentina.
Got it. All right. Excellent. I'm a huge soccer fan, by the way. That's another thing we have in common.
But you guys in Cincinnati are building a brand new stadium. It's going to be great. Our ex-CEO, Mike Whitman, and a good friend of mine, she's the part owner of that team.
She is, and that was a big deal for us. That was a very big deal.
Yeah,
for us.
exactly.
We were happy to see it, and it's about time we get some, I think some good.
Now you need some players now. Now you need some
players.
Well,
hey, there's a different call, Antonio. Well, shifting a little bit to HPE. Obviously, like you said, massive company, worldwide footprint, very successful. You were saying earlier, your stock price is doing quite well. The company's doing quite well. You're shifting into a service-oriented model. Can you talk to us a little bit about what HP, maybe where the evolution started a few years ago, and then where you see HP going in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, obviously we look at what's going on out in the market, in the enterprise, but customers of all sizes. We live in a digital economy. Digital transformation is accelerating. It's no longer a priority, it's a strategic imperative. And think about it. You and I probably grew up at the same time. We were in the mainframe area. The terminal was that green screen. Then we went to the PC client server, which is where I personally started to work as a professional. Then the internet came along. We connected departments at scale and the global level. Now we live in what I call the mobile first, cloud first approach, which obviously is a centralized model. So we went centralized, decentralized, centralized. But now what we see is a massive opportunity called the edge. And so we're going to move from what I call cloud computing to the edge computing era, where we both live in a centralized, decentralized world, which means you need to provide an edge to cloud architecture to our customers. More and more of that data is created where we live and work. Think about it. You and I having this conversation. You're in your home. I'm in my home. That's the new way to work, which means you need to provide secure, seamless connectivity to participate in this new distributed environment. We need to be sure that we don't create a digital divide, because to me, connectivity is an essential service, no different than water and electricity. You are in the business to provide connectivity to people, right?
We are, and by the way, thank you for that promotion.
And so we as a company have a clear vision to become the edge to cloud platform as a service. Why as a service? Because while this new architecture is taking hold, at the same time, the consumption model is shifting from CapEx to OpEx. And so, we do a lot of work analysis, segmentation, whatever it is, not the point of today. But we believe we have a unique opportunity to be incredibly relevant in this new world. And this is where we have established a clear strategy for our company with a clear set of innovation portfolios that we are driving in the connectivity space, in the cloud space, and the as-a-service space. But at the end, it's all about accelerating what is next. And to me, it's all about the power of data. All our intellectual property, your company, my company, is all in the data. And today we're only using 10% of that data. So the question is how we extract more insight from that data that eventually can protect you or create new business models or, allows you to compete more effectively. We have a saying in our companies that the future belongs to the fast, and those who can extract insight from the data faster will be the winners. But we conduct ourselves, Leigh, with one principle, which is our culture. And we have 4 core beliefs that we use on a daily basis to guide ourselves. One is to accelerate what is next for our customers. 2 is we believe in bold moves. 3 is the power of yes, we can. We before I. And 4th, being a force for good. This is a company that has a clear purpose, which is to advance the way people live and work. And we do that with uncompromising integrity, and we partly innovate and act. That's who we are. And that's why more than 2/3 of our business gets done through our partners like you.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a few things there that I absolutely love. The we, as a CEO, I think one of the things you immediately realize about your job is it is no longer about you. It is about them, and that them is your employees and your customers, and obviously, look, we have 4,500 employees worldwide, and I spent a lot of time trying to connect with employees and really try to push down decision making into the lowest level. We are big believers of the people closest to the customer or closest to the opportunity or the issue. Those are the individuals that should be making the decisions, right? But that's difficult in a corporation. It's difficult in a 4,500 person corporation.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it's like with the amount of people that you have worldwide. We use things like our ERGs, right, to really help our employees take ownership of culture and process and really driving what they want to see. How do you look at it in HPE, and what are some of the things that you use both to keep your employees connected, but also keep yourself as the CEO connected with your employees?
Well, multiple things, right? The concept "you are as good as the team around you" is true, right? And I believe, the biggest job a CEO has is planning for succession. Yes, you and I will go in the history of how much shareholder value we created. All the financial metrics are important. The return we provided to them. But what I think my legacy will be measured on is the culture of the company. Did I create the opportunity for our employees to fulfill the dreams like I fulfilled my dreams? And then ultimately plan for that succession. And so that's why in my business, and I think in yours is the same, we only compete with the best technology and the best talent. And so my number one job is making sure we attract, retain, and develop that talent. And then structure the company in a way that's easy to do business with and operate. When I became CEO, it was not very popular, right? But I used to have a go-to-market that had worldwide, geo, sub-geos, and countries. I say, hell with that. That's by the time I get the truth, is no longer a truth because the country gives to the sub-region give it to the regions give it to worldwide, the worldwide give it to the business unit. But I think it to me it doesn't matter. So I say, hell with that. Now we have one leader that runs 10 geos, and that's it. So between me and the country, there's one layer. So I get, for the most part, the truth, okay? Because I have to say, the truth is in the cold face. And then you have to leverage the employees, enroll them, right? So in this context of inclusion and diversity, we are using all our ERG groups, whether it's Conexión in your case with the Hispanic community or the Asian community, African American community, right? We have all engaged. But think about it. You have 4,500 people. What if the 4,500 people knew each other one-to-one? The power of that connection and sharing their views and perspectives and values. Because one of the problems we have as a society, at least at this time, we don't listen to each other. We assume things, right? And we are quick to respond without understanding what the other person is trying to tell you, particularly in topics like inclusion. or diversity. And so that's my quest, and I know a lot of people in my company because I grew up in many ways in this company. But boy, what I told the team today, I said, listen, here is the homework assignment. I want a process that collectively each of us take a sponsor for one of your colleagues and get to know one of your colleagues and then create that magic connection between 60,000 employees. I think that will be very powerful in addressing some of the challenges we all live today. And that ultimately creates a better high-performance culture because ultimately it's what you want.
I agree. And in candidly, I think, look, as I've gotten to know you a little bit, I think that's where your background really helps. I mean, I know that when I traveled, one of the things as a young man that I saw was, being from Cincinnati in the Midwest, it was amazing how similar everyone was. Whether I was in Africa or in Europe or in South America, you meet people that you really enjoyed being around. You met some people that you didn't so much enjoy being around. No different than being here in my hometown. And really, as you got to know people, same hopes and dreams, same things you care about as family. And like, it's just, we are truly a globally connected community. And I agree with you. If we can figure out ways to let people see that and connect even stronger, I think it's,
exactly.
I think it's key. So that's amazing.
Remember, at the core, we're all human beings, right? Before you put the work, and and you want to make sure that you connect with them at the human level. Then you can talk about work, and then obviously from there you build a relationship that will last for life. And that's, absolutely, I think, is going to be my bigger legacy. Is my connection with the people. Absolutely,
that's fantastic. Well, speaking of the people, we just went through a very unique year. Hopefully, it's so unique we'll never see it again in our lifetimes. But we'll see. As you look back at the last year and how your employees and your company went through and handled the pandemic, what are some of the things that you believe may or may not change? Obviously, as just like me, I'm sure you just have a ton of people asking you questions about how does this change how we work, how we interact. So first and foremost, how did you react with so many employees so suddenly with the pandemic? And then as you look forward, how do you think it changes how we work and interact together?
Yeah, listen, 2020 was a year unlike any other, right? So we already collectively were challenged by the geopolitical tensions, the macroeconomic challenges, which obviously were aggravated by the pandemic. We saw massive supply chain disruption in our business. And then on top of that, you have the social injustice that happened. And I left few things on the political side that not worth mentioning.
Exactly.
So I think it was, again, it was a year unlike any other. But at the same time, it posed an opportunity for us to really step back and address some of the long-term challenges we have had, but also think about the opportunities about the future. So the first thing, obviously, my first focus was our employees, the safety and the well-being of them. So we obviously enacted what we call the crisis management team, where we have to do it at every country level to make sure every employee was safe, and they had the tools that they needed to stay productive and engaged. And I was hosting bi-weekly calls with employees to share with them what we see and what we're doing about it. And we use a framework called assess, address, and adapt. Every day we assess the situation, which obviously was very fluid, address what was in our control, and adapt to the circumstances of the moment. And then collect the relevant intelligence as we think about the long-term future. So our employees clearly, love the engagement. They give us high mark for transparency and communication. By the way, at the time, we also implemented, I think is revolutionary in many ways. We implemented a 6 months parental leave for people who were having a child. And this was true for the father and the mother, or an adoption for the mother. So I think that's unheard of in our country. But we felt that was the right thing to do. And then obviously along the way, we established programs for mental health, physical health, and counseling whatever is needed. And by the way, some of our employees were hosting seminars to do yoga classes and do all the things that keep the community tight. And then as I think about the future, and obviously we talk about the acceleration of digital transformation, but as a technical individual, we think about the technology opportunities going forward. And obviously we double down in the edge technologies. And I think, we see the result of that. Last quarter, our business grew 11%. And then as I think about the future of working, 50% of our employees, Leigh, will never come back to the office to do the actual jobs.
50?
So, yes, more than 50%.
Wow.
So,
wow. Okay.
And so what we did, we established what we call an edge to office program. And we basically, working with the manager, said, based on the type of job or function they're doing, which person needs to be categorized as an edge worker and which person as an office worker. However, there is an important caveat. Everybody can come to the office to meet, socialize, have fun, do innovation sessions, but some of them, at least 50%, don't need a desk to lock in the PC every day and sit there to do the actual work. And so if you think about some of the challenges in the Bay Area, the traffic infrastructure is insane, ridiculous. In my case, when I used to live in the Bay Area, I used to travel hour and a half to the office, an hour and a half back. Think about it, 3 hours of productivity and honestly stress that you don't need. So they may now go once a week to have the meeting, but not 5 times, wasting all the time. And so this H2 Office program has really created a new way of thinking, but then also forces us to use all the technologies. All our new sites are fully digital enabled, automated. So you click the button, your meetings are tapped, reserve, and all of that. But you need that physical, connectivity face-to-face. And that's why we are redesigning all our sites to be open spaces for collaboration and meetings and connectivity that you need when you're together.
So as you look at, you mentioned earlier, you guys are right in the middle of a build of a headquarters in Houston, and you're rethinking real estate. So as you look at your real estate footprint, obviously you're just looking at how people interact differently. Is it about that flexibility? That is that the key component that you're building into how you look at real estate?
Absolutely. Houston is a very vibrant, and you were here for a few years, vibrant and the most diverse city in the United States. Obviously, it's a large metropolitan area. They have a huge sense of community. In 2017 and 16 and 17, Houston was hit twice by tropical storms and whatever. And in an old campus, which used to be a compact campus, got flooded twice. And so I promised at the time our employees in Houston, we're going to build a new campus. It was going to be above the water, okay? Nothing special, just be above the water. And so I started the new campus in 2019 with the objective to get it done by Christmas 2021. So it will take 2 years. And then the pandemic hit. We thought about, where we want to work, what type of jobs we want where, particularly to attract and retain the talent, because the Bay Area is a ridiculously expensive place. And not everybody can buy a house. Actually, the vast majority cannot afford a house in the Bay Area. So we said, there's an opportunity to move the headquarters, but also create the best of both worlds. We created now a tech hub in Silicon Valley, which is obviously thought leadership for the future innovation. And also we have innovation in Houston with the corporate functions. And so this new site in Houston is going to be fantastic in many ways because it has these new experiences built into it. And we weave into the fabric of the site all these digital technologies. We don't have phones in the office at all. It's all over the internet.
Whoa, you're talking to a phone company CEO. Time out.
It's called voice over IP.
Let's rewind a little bit. Just for everyone listening, he didn't mean it.
Yeah, you can resell our technology and route and profit from that too.
No, look, it really is. It's very similar to how we're thinking about the world going forward. You know, the key word that I use for folks, constantly is optionality, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the things the pandemic did for us was, I was always a big believer of trying to force decision making and get people to make decisions, be more comfortable, and really taking kind of ownership of what they do. And I think this has honestly forced us into that mode of,
Yeah.
we didn't have a choice, right? You as an employee, you need to dictate how you're the most productive, right? I'm not going to look over your shoulder. I cannot do it. And so I love the concept of just building that hub and spoke, where you build a centralized hub that if they want to, they can visit and they can interact, but ultimately they can be on the edge and they can interact from the edge and in centrally.
Exactly.
And it's seamless, right?
And by the way, it gives a tremendous flexibility to the employee, but it's also more
Correct.
capital efficient for the company too. And by the way, those are people who work, those employees that will stay home, we don't let them alone. We actually provide them all the infrastructure that they need to work from home, right?
Yeah.
So instead of spending thousands of dollars a year on infrastructure, we wasted. Because before the pandemic, we were doing measurements of utilization rates, and on average was 50% around the globe. So here you go. It's like I'm buying a vacation home and I visit it only once a year. Why I want to do that? I'd rather do Airbnb or something like that, right? But then how for the sites I use, I give them the best experience and drive 100% utilization rate, or at least close possible, and create that vibrant community versus have half of the building empty, which makes no sense.
Well, and you said it earlier. I mean, that's when it hit me sort of halfway through the pandemic when I had an employee, even here in Cincinnati, tell me, I live north of the office, and it takes me 45 minutes to come in, 45 minutes back. Leigh, I just, by not coming to the office, I just produced another work day this week. And it was like light bulbs going off, like, how is that not more efficient, right? Let them decide, right, what is more effective for them. Let them be adults, and and I think that's just where we're going to as a society.
And the reality, Leigh, people will work longer and more efficient. However, what I worry obviously is that because of that flexibility, they may burn themselves because they don't understand the time limitations. So one of the programs we instituted is that once a month we call Wellness Friday, and after 2:00 your time, wherever you are around the globe, you have 3 hours to do whatever you want. And we force our managers no meeting after that time.
That's
a way to find the right work-life balance. Because I know I get those 3 hours during the week because they work longer.
Well, there's no separation of, I call it, there's no separation of church and state. I'm sitting here in my downstairs. I keep working. Before I knew I left my office to come home and experience the home life. It's all one now, right? And so it's very hard, and it does take someone being very intentional about it.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
We've got a few questions. I know we're running, towards the end here, and I want to make sure we get to some of the questions we were sent in. One of the questions was, Antonio, please describe the most effective team that you've ever worked on, and what were the characteristics that made that team so exceptional?
Well, I actually have several examples, but when I moved to Boise, Idaho to lead the technical solution team for the legislative business, that sense of community and togetherness, I guess, sparked an enormous amount of creativity. And it was a group of, at that time, 5 people that brought to the market what is called today managed print services. I was part of it. At the time, we call it a different brand. It was called HP Print Advantage, and eventually became HP Managed Print Services. And and that was a business innovation itself, more than a technology innovation, which was pay as you go, pay per page. You print 100 pages, we charge you 100 pages. You don't need to buy the toner, you don't need to buy the printer. We charge you for the number of pages you use. But that team, was all for one for all in many ways, and it was a good combination of diverse skill sets, and also, by the way, gender. And that was an amazing team that took no for an answer, learn from the mistakes, and keep iterating until we hit the mark. The other one I will say is when I introduced the first high-performance computing liquid-cooled solution for Hewlett-Packard in 2013. It was revolutionary in many ways. It was it is today a marvel of engineering innovation. Normally, you think about a rack of servers with a bunch of cables, but this one's come with a rack of servers, a bunch of cables, and mechanical parts and ICU units, cooling units that distribute the water. And we did some amazing deployments, like, for example, with the NASA, or where we are doing, we do the National Renewable Energy Lab. All that water that recirculates hits the building, so you don't have heating costs because the water itself is so hot that hits the building.
Amazing.
And melts the snow in the parking lots. So because we use that, but even as of recent, right, 3 weeks ago, we launched our edge compute into space. So now that compute is sitting in the International Space Station because the NASA now needs processing power at the edge, and that's a far edge, 256, kilometers above the Earth.
You might be redefining the edge.
Yeah, and think about scientists that are processing data as they collect it. But I don't know if you remember watching the movie Passenger with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, when he wakes up and he realizes, oh my God, we are in trouble. I need to send a mail telling the base we're in trouble. When he sends the mail, it says it's going to take 77 years to get the mail. That's a big latency, I call it. And so now, as we prepare for Mars and be able to process, they need these hope processing station. And it's amazing what we can do as individuals when we put ourselves a focus. But it's all about giving them a clear mission and then enable them to do that.
Yeah. I would completely agree. I mean, and you said some key things there. Diversity is I believe, a huge part
Absolutely.
of it. Right. And surrounding yourself with people that are incredibly transparent and give you feedback. I know as a CEO, I have a phenomenal team around me, and the one thing I value most is I'm never trying to figure out what they're thinking. Right. They're never shy about telling me what they think. And that's what you want. You may not always agree with it, but you have to hear it, right?
Yeah.
Because hearing it just makes you better, right? And so,
of course, anyone high curiosity, right? The people that are always curious to ask the right question, and also wanted to learn more about things. And those people will go far.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. We have one final question. Now, this is the question I wanted to end with. I think this is just a fun question. And it was really addressed to both of us, but I'm going to address it to you, since you are the guest of honor and you're the guy on the spot here.
No.
If you were to look back and give yourself advice 15 years ago, what would that advice be?
15 years ago? Let me see what I was 15 years ago. The reality, you can do more. Always you can do more. Never hold back. Listen, everybody's going to make mistakes. Sometimes, I find myself being a little bit too conservative. In the end, all gets sorted out. You don't want to be reckless, obviously, but you want to be smart, calculated risk. But listen, I would not be here today if I didn't take risks in my life. Constant risk all the time. And to me, that's something that is important in order to progress. Maybe the advice, to be honest with you, is more about the family. Along the way, you realize, and I have 2 kids now, right? So my daughter is a sophomore in Santa Clara University, and my son is a senior in high school. And he applied for a few colleges, and hopefully we'll get one of them. But I just can, the pandemic kind of makes you think about it. what if I would have spent more time with my kids, and you miss big parts of the life. So what I did 2 weeks ago, my son is 17. He's a big dude, huge. I mean, 6'4", almost 6'5".
Wow.
He has an amazing body composition, but he's 278 pounds. He's a football player, right? But, I keep telling him, hey, you need to start thinking about your wellness. It's not about pushing 200 pounds of weight. And so he and I spend a week together in this place where you get educated about nutrition, about exercise. And I reconnected with him as a father and son, right? That, and it was good to also learn how he thinks, what creates anxiety in him, because these kids are all anxious, I tell you. Either depression or anxiety, some of the kids are totally in that space. And I learned a lot about him. So again, maybe advice is don't let the opportunity to spend more time with your family.
That is 100% the advice I would give. I would say that looking back, and you said it, look, we're all wired. If you make it into this job, you're typically a type A. You're aggressive, curious. You're a hard worker. But my advice to people would be present, and be present, especially around your family, because you don't get that time back. Period.
Nope, it's not.
Well, Antonio, it was an absolute pleasure.
It was fun, Leigh. Thank you.
Yeah, absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you joining us today. It was a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to talk, and really to let I hope one of the things that people see out of these conversations is that Antonio, myself, CEOs, we're human beings also. We wake up every morning, and Antonio said it several times. We make a lot of mistakes. We take a lot of risks. We learn. We're human, right? And so really appreciate the time with you.
No, thank you. I appreciate you having me today. And the only thing I will say, Leigh, you have to learn Spanish because this is conexión. So, tendríamos que haberlo hecho en español para que la gente entienda lo que hablamos aquí.
This is why you're so much smarter than I am. I'm so bad. I took years and years of Spanish, and I used to tell my Spanish teacher, I don't know that I have that side of my brain. I'm very mathematic, and for some reason I struggle.
Listen, here's the
bad.
secret. Here's the secret that I'm going to the edge to live. The way I learned the language is by having different girlfriends at the time. So when I was young, I learned it because they taught me the language. So that's like a forcing function. But
I
listen,
I think I need to go immerse myself in Argentina is what I need to do. I'll learn pretty fast.
All right.
Well, thank you again, Jonathan. I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Yep.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, guys, for being here. Antonio, appreciate your willingness to do this with us. Really, it's an honor for us, and in the name of CVT, Hawaiian Untitled Onyx, thank you very much for all the HPE teams that make this possible. And I don't know, we have 2 more minutes. We'd like to see if you have some final remarks to finish this event. Anything you want to say for all of us?
No, I will say, nothing is impossible. You are your own limitation. So you can achieve anything you put your head into it. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be frustrating at times. But the reality, you are your own limitation. If I have done it, Leigh had done it, any of you can do it. It's just a matter of putting yourself a goal and plant flags that you can get to it and then plant the next flag. That's how it works. And then obviously you need a little bit of luck to be in the right place at the right time. But in the end, you can do whatever you want with your life if you put your head into it.
Amen.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. And I wish you guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay.
Antonio, thank you. Jonathan, thank you
right.
so much. Take
Thank
care.
You.